All right, so I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'm here today to present what was my master's thesis research, and it was applying system dynamics to CNO modeling. But before I begin, I want to give a quick thank you to a few people who I couldn't have done this without. The first is Jared Ettinger, who was my thesis advisor. Andy Moore at CertCC in Pittsburgh, he does a lot of stuff with SD and insider threat research and was really happy to help me apply it to larger CNO modeling. And Dina Schick, who's here today, couldn't have done it without her feedback and without her input. And everybody here today, it's actually great that people showed up. So just to give you guys kind of a rundown on how I approached my research, the idea was really Jared's. He kind of threw it out in class one day of, what if we could do this? And so I went up to him and said, hey, can I do this as my thesis? And he was like, yeah, sure, that's awesome. And so we kind of broke it down into fourths over the course of a semester. I did a lot of SD-specific research. I did a lot of research specifically on the adversary I chose, which happened to be APT1. And then I did a lot of model development, and then I wrote my paper, which I am willing to share with anybody who would like a PDF copy. So basically what the research looked like was a ton of textbooks. SD is a very formalized modeling system, and there are a ton of textbooks. They're very awful and very dry, but necessary to read to spin yourself up on a topic. And then I split that with China and Operation Aurora research, researching everything from white papers published by the likes of Northrop Grumman to online articles from threat intelligence organizations like Mandiant and FireEye. I iterated through over 10 model drafts. I think I'm on like 20 now, I think is the version number. And really one of the big things I learned is feedback is a gift. If you're not getting different perspectives on your research, you're really not learning and growing. And even if it's, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I don't agree with what you did, it's a good thing to have that perspective and get the involvement of others. So why did I pick modeling? Why CNO modeling? Conceptualization and information security is something that is often overlooked or poorly done, in my opinion. There's a lot of complex models out there. Just about the only one that I can think of that's not complex is the cyber kill chain. But even then, it only really takes into consideration the more technical side of things in only one perspective. It doesn't offer the entire CNO from start to finish model. And I really wanted to make something that was simple and easily consumable by somebody like my mom. Like, I wanted my mom to be able to understand. I want you guys as moms to be able to understand what's going on. It shouldn't be so complex and technical that it's unapproachable. And additionally, I really wanted to focus on why. Why do actors act in certain ways? How do they act in certain ways? How is this a reflection of their overall strategy, intelligence, policy management, and decision-making process? And this really comes out in SD in what is known as feedback loops. And it's the idea of everybody's iterating through some process and trying to iterate through as fast as possible. So that leads us into why system dynamics. Really, everything is a system. Everything can be modeled as a system at some level, whether it's an ecosystem, whether it's a computer network operation, it really doesn't matter. And SD really focuses in on that rates and optimization through the idea of feedback loops. And these rates and optimization are how you can start to begin to extrapolate out the why. If you see what people are allocating and how much of it they're allocating and what the time frame is, you can kind of use that to infer and extrapolate out their larger strategy, which is their why. Because at the end of the day, we're not fighting computers on a bits and bytes levels, we're fighting humans. There are human motivating factors. And that's really why I wanted to focus on the policies and management and the decision-making processes available to different adversaries and targets organizations. And this insight comes from events. So an event in terms of SD can be a CNO. It can be a large CNO campaign. It can be one part of a CNO campaign. You can model it at different levels and at different scales and rapidly expand and contract. So case study Operation Aurora. I know this is an old topic, but I wanted to pick something that was very well documented. I didn't want to have to struggle with, all right, well, how do I get information? I wanted to pick something that was everyone pretty much agreed upon, everyone understood what was going on. So just to give you guys a recap, because it's been a while, Google, Adobe, and 30 other companies were compromised by what is attributed with high confidence as APT1. And as a result, Google left China for a time, especially their R&D side, because as a result of this CNO, Chinese dissidents were targeted via Gmail and Google services, and also source code management was targeted. There's a common software management and source code management software utilized by all of the companies that were compromised, and the theory is, or at least my theory is, that they were trying to get access to current copies of source code as kind of a cheat sheet for vulnerability analysis, or be able to insert their own backdoors into future versions of source code without even having to get access to it. They could just put their own in instead of waiting for developers to make mistakes. So this basically happened over 6 steps. So the first one is a phishing email. It's always a phishing email. Then it was a malicious JavaScript payload, which had downloaded from IE, and it contained a 0-day. And then from there, the binary executed, a backdoor is established, and basically spread throughout the network and exfiltrated data. And this picture is from McAfee. So now I want to get into how all of this applies with the model that I developed. But before I begin, I want to state some assumptions. This is a very young model, even though there are 20 different versions. It doesn't account for the balancing of profit and cost centers. It's really designed to be consumed at this stage with security at its forefront. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the software VenSim. It's a modeling tool for system dynamics. It's not very pretty, so I didn't use it for my slides, but it did allow for some great things like unit validation and things like that to make sure that everything made sense from a baseline units perspective in terms of mathematics. And like I said, feedback is a gift. I think BSides is using Peerless to get feedback. Definitely reach out to me there. And my Twitter handle I'll have at the end. I would love to hear your comments and get your feedback. So this is the key. So we have this idea of a sink or a source, and that's basically where the information enters the purview of the model. So this is where it starts or where it leaves the purview of the model of the information I'm trying to model. Then you have these level equations. So in terms of this model, that's kind of like your TTP. They're your bag of tricks, your things that you can do and use. Generic rates are conversions of auxiliary rates into different things. So an auxiliary rate you can think of as a subcategory of a generic rate. So you'll see that the larger generic rate is resources, and the subcategories of that, for example, would be people, time, and money. And then this rate down here, the symbol, is when you are converting one thing's state to another. It's the same thing, but you're just converting its state. So you'll see that's what happens between clean and compromised machines. So we want to look at APT1, or really any adversary. They have some sort of policy and management structure. They allocate resources here indicated by the positive. These resources then are allocated into training, hiring people, money, and infrastructure. Hiring people can also be a less formal recruiting people to your cause if you're not quite of a formal organization. These resources are then converted into capabilities, and these are kind of similar to the CKC, a little different. You have information gathering or recon, you have social engineering attacks, 0-day attacks, non-0-day attacks. So what I mean by non-0-day attacks really is these are attacks that are known, they've been seen before, they're defensible if you configure your posture correctly. And then we have what is middle infrastructure, which is coined by Dina Schick, and it's really this idea of a hot point. I compromise host A, use host A to pivot to point B. So then we can see the APT1 action. So they use all of these things to go to try to convert clean machines to compromised machines. And information, it's hard to tell with all of the lines, flows back and forth between information gathering, and the middle infrastructure is also a positive. Everything else is a negative. And the reason it's a negative is because you're giving away your TTP. By acting and doing these things, you're establishing a pattern or a procedure for what you're doing. And you see down here that we have this other sync, a kinetic or geopolitical action. So think in APT1's case of Operation Aurora, this is them spying on Google, Chinese dissidents via Google. This is outside the purview of cyber. You're using computers as a means to an end for something geopolitical or very much kinetic. So the large feedback loop here is APT1 is allocating resources. They're developing capabilities. They're using their capabilities. They're getting middle infrastructure and information back. They're reallocating their resources. They're redeveloping and reallocating capabilities and doing it all again. So it's this larger circle here that we see, which would be considered their feedback loop. That's what they're trying to optimize. They're trying to do that as fast as possible. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to look at the other half of the model, which is their target. And you'll see it looks very similar. Target has the same things. They have a policy and management body. They have resources, they have the same resources that they can use to allocate. However, in the case of the target, they're going to develop hardening capabilities rather than offensive capabilities. And these offensive capabilities are going to have an impact on clean machines and compromised machines. And from the compromised machines, the attacks, hopefully you're getting detection information, which can then inform hardening. So we have a little smaller sub-feedback loop of this is your short-term information impacting your hardening. So think we're seeing data exfil over whatever port that we shouldn't be seeing. So we're going to write a firewall rule to block that right now. This is short-term, it's not strategy, it's more at the tactical level. And then you see this other feedback loop in here, which involves threat intelligence. So this is only for mature organizations. I understand that not every organization at every state is going to be able to consume some sort of threat intelligence, but if they are mature enough to do that, they can use this to inform their detection capabilities and their hardening capabilities, and then the detection and threat intelligence in the long run as a strategy will re-impact the policy and management. So that's kind of the idea that if somebody comes to you like an ISAC and says, hey, you're a bank and actor X is attacking banks, how do you readjust your strategy and policy at the highest levels to help combat that and reallocate your resources accordingly? So that's really this detection loops here that we really can focus on. We see that all of these things are going in here, and so if you get, if you're seeing scans, you can use that to readjust your hardening or inform your threat intelligence. You can use that and reallocate that information and sort of iterate through that process at as high of a level or as low of a level as you want. And so the final model looks like this. I know it's hard to fit all in one slide, but basically the red box is the feedback loop of the adversary, and the blue box is the feedback loop of the target or the defenders. And you can see that they interact right here at this middle point of the thing that they're all trying to impact is clean machines and compromised machines. Obviously, the target wants to keep their clean machines clean, and the adversary wants to compromise the clean machines. So just to summarize, the purpose of this model is really to focus on resources and allocation to inform what strategy and policy are. And by focusing on the optimization and using that, we can infer and extrapolate out the why. Why are humans acting different ways? Why are they using this capability versus another capability? Different things like that. And that all comes from understanding the policy, the procedures, and the strategy, not necessarily the bytes and bits technical. Those are really just a means to an end. Doesn't matter what tool you use to scan. Why are you scanning? Well, because I'm going to attack that. Well, why are you going to attack that? And kind of get that idea of the larger system that's being used. And I really think that that allows us to see this nexus of intelligence, strategy, and policy really coming together at the highest levels to then inform the lowest levels of technology. And just some notes on my future work. Right now, this is a retrospective look. I'm not a mathematician. I'm very bad at math. I would love to find a data scientist to work with to apply a mathematics simulation and be able to model and predict attacks. So, if, for example, you could put in all of the information regarding the resources and allocation and information about policy and management structures, and then model Operation Aurora and watch it go through using something like BenSim. And then I would like to also test against other information sources. Given that I only had a semester for the research, I would love to take another CNO and see if the information still holds and analyze it at the level at which I analyzed Operation Aurora. And part of that is all to make this consumable. Right now, this model, I understand, is very academic and it's more of a thought exercise, but I would love for an organization to be able to take this and say, okay, I now understand that I'm here in the model, and this is where I am in my feedback loop, and this is where I need to get, and this is the amount of time it's taking me to hit all of these steps, so how do I move through that faster? And one of my thoughts with this at the bigger picture, almost like nation-state level, is you can determine minimum operating levels. So if you know that you need this many hired and trained people to attack, your adversary needs this many people at this skill set to attack you. For lack of a better example, you could do something like what the United States government did with the Iranians and blocking them from being able to go into nuclear physicist programs. You could do something similar, pick an adversary at the nation-state level and deny them access to what they need, starving them such that they can't perform their actions at least the highest levels. So instead of having qualified people who can actually develop and find 0 days exploits for them, maybe they can only use Metasploit now because that's all the capability they have in terms of training and resources. So they're still going to attack you, and they still want to attack you, but maybe you can defend yourself better because you now know what to expect, or you can expect something that's hopefully a lot more defensible for your organization. So that's all I have. That's my Twitter handle. Please reach out to me there. I'll be checking PeerList as well, and I welcome any feedback right now.
Is that 2 underscores?
What?
Is that 2 underscores?
Yeah, 2 underscores. Somebody took 1 underscore. It's rude.
Is there a place where you go read your paper?
Right now, it's not published anywhere. I do have it out on a Google Drive, and if you reach out to me via Twitter, I'd be happy to share that link with you.
So, Sarah, thank you. This was really interesting. I'm going to ask you to speculate for a little bit.
Okay.
Based on the components of your model and how you might adapt it, what are some of the insights that we might be able to glean that come from going through a simulation that you think aren't immediately evident from the assumptions you made going into the simulation?
I think that one of the most obvious things is by seeing what capabilities are thrown at you, you can make and speculate and sort of derive intelligence as to the level of your adversary. Are we talking script kiddies? Are we talking, cyber criminals? Or are we talking nation states acting for cyber espionage reasons, trying to impact critical infrastructure for very geopolitical reasons? And from that, I think that by seeing what's being thrown at you, you can sort of determine the maturity and the sophistication of your adversary and make your decisions based on that as well.
That's fascinating. There's some researchers that I should connect to that are trying to look at the code itself to make such implications. I think that macro plus
awesome.
micro would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
What opportunities do you think there are for the model to work with subject matter experts and subject matter experts to complement the model to produce a improved combined, say, view of the situation?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of room for that. I'm not a subject matter expert in anything. I'm just starting my career. So the idea of being able to actually work with and connect with other people and make this a much bigger, much more well-informed research project, that would be awesome. I think that would be a great place. I think it would definitely add the credibility required to make this more consumable.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And please remember to follow on PeerList.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.